Server is healthy? Are you guessing? Let's figure that out. So we'll get into the conversation right now. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them into the. This is my first LinkedIn Live, so if you have any questions, put them in the feed. And if I look away, it's because I'm trying to make sure I can find the event and see your questions. I think I'll see them here in Restream, but this is a bit new to me, so bear with me on that. But anyway, if your SQL Server is running, it doesn't really mean it's healthy. And yeah, no duh. But is it? A lot of clients come to us and they say things like, well, it was running just fine. The applications always worked. Our backup jobs succeed and the events are green. There's no alerts. Why is this causing problems for me all of a sudden? And we start looking and we go a little bit deeper and we say, well, it's because it's not been maintained. You've not been watching it. You've had problems without even realizing it. And that's why we're here. That's why we've created free tools. That's why Jeff has the SP Check Health tools. And that's why we're here to help you out. And that's what we're going to do this week, or this talk rather. Sorry. So one question to ask you, if you're here watching this, or if you're just watching the recording of this, ask yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, how healthy is your SQL Server? Are they actually healthy? Go ahead and put that number in the comment if you like. I have the comments up now. I think I'm by the window. But just keep in mind what the number is, and then we'll come back to that at the end of the conversation. So there are 6 questions I think that we should answer to us. There's probably a lot more, but there are 6 questions that we're going to answer today about your SQL Server health. Somebody just gave a 5 in the comments. That's great. That's actually a really honest answer. Thanks, Brian. We're not going to cover every one of these questions in great depth in this one talk. Again, this is really a survey course, and we're going to give you the tools. So I want you today to know what the questions are, to see what free tools that you can get from us and from the community, and start answering these questions yourself. So the first question is it secure? And this is a departure. Whenever I used to speak to DBAs and like the conversations that pass and different events, I would say things like, how do you know? Well, not how do you know? Sorry, that's what we're talking about today. I would say, what's the most important thing for a DBA to do? And I would always say backup and recovery is first. If that's a duh. And I think it still is first, but the landscape for security has really changed dramatically. And I would say security is just as important. Obviously, if you can't recover it, you have nothing. But if it's not secure, you have a big expensive headache. So that's why we're going to talk about security first here. But really, 1 and 2, I will put them equally first. So who has the keys to your data? We're going to show you a tool in a second that we have that you can grab from GitHub yourself and do, called SP Check Security. But is SA unnecessarily enabled? I cannot tell you how many times you go to a SQL Server environment and we find everybody is the system administrator, and I mean everybody. And the application owner, the management team, the vendors, the vendor support team, the whole world is SA. That happens. And we're going to talk a lot more about security in the webinar with Jeff and I on 9/16, when we talk about how to know if your SQL servers are actually secure. But it matters. And you don't, this is, we talk a little bit to credit unions here, but really it doesn't apply just to credit unions. But if you are a credit union, Part 748 in the NCUA, exams and audits says you have to be secure. You have to have an information security and governance plan. And if you're not going to pass your exam. And if you're state regulated, same thing. But if you're not regulated, you still need to answer this question. And I'll give you an example. We had a client come to us and they had an application. They had one SQL server. They had many, but they had one SQL server with a few applications on it. And these applications each did different things. One, however, faced members, really not members, but it faced the public. And it was used by vendors and kind of like a support team that wasn't in their network. And the first thing that you had to do was prove that you were somebody who had access. So that's good. They had access controls. The problem is this application, this help desk tool was written probably in the 90s, and they didn't have any SQL injection protections. And this was in 2024, by the way. So you can't hear this, oh, well, SQL injection is not a problem anymore. Yeah, it is. Even if you have a web application firewall, a WAF, doesn't mean you're secure. But they were up the creek. And one application had too much permission, and the other application required XP command shell to be enabled, and they did it without thinking about how these applications work. Well, long story short, their system administration team actually thankfully noticed that they were getting, I forget what it was exactly, but somebody was trying to do privilege escalation in Windows. There were scripts trying to be run that weren't succeeding, thankfully. And it turns out that the vector of attack wasn't SQL Server. Oftentimes it's not SQL Server, thankfully. But in this case, it was SQL Server is what I meant to say. I mean, it was the application server, but through SQL. So what happened was the SQL injection succeeded, and it was on the login screen. So it was wide open to the public. They got in, they compromised SQL, they found XP command shell, they enabled stuff. Then they started doing OA automation, which was also enabled for that other application anyway. They injected some code and they started running, and they started trying to get into the Windows system, and it would have been bad. And we said, yeah, we can help you. They became a customer. We fixed it, and we explained what happened. And you know, SQL injection is a real thing. But if you're not secure, if you don't pass all the stuff at SP check security, you're up the creek when that happens. So you have to have a good base of security, and you can do this right now. You can in fact, if you go to straightpathsql.com/blog, I'll have a link at the end. But if you go there, you'll see post today about SP check health, which we'll talk about. But up at the top, there's tools on our website, and you can get these. But there's a post, I think like the third post down is the post about this event. And when I'm all done with this event, I'll take any questions from the comments over in the other window, and I'll take anything I discussed, like these tools, and I'll just update the event with some links for you. But really, you can just Google search for SP check security from StraightPath. It's free. It's on GitHub. It's no email required. I don't want your money. I just want you to take this tool and run it and see what it says. And then come to September, you'll have this tool run. You'll understand what we're looking for. And then you can come and actually intelligently look at your database server and see what you need to see. And we'll talk about the 6 most common findings that we find there. But open your eyes up and run this tool, and hopefully you don't get too scared. What's number two? Number two, again, you could argue to me, is also probably number one for some people, but really, can you actually recover it? You know, you're backing up your database? Yeah, every night. Cool, you're done. No, you're not done. When does somebody last do a restore test? How do you know it? Was it automated? Did you run a check DB on it? Do you check everything? Do you check your log backup restores, your differentials? Can you recover to a point in time? All these questions need to be asked. You know, we get so many calls. I have a whole series called the Regret Series of blog posts on our website. And in the Regret series of posts, I talk about the people who call us up, and I say, yeah, you have corruption. And I say, no, you have no backups. You're in trouble because it's the bad kind of corruption. I mean, all corruption is bad, but some is worse than others. and it's a really bad conversation. And I say, I wish I talked to you 2 weeks before, because we could have stopped this. So are you doing a proper job on recoverability? A successful backup job just tells you that your backup ran. But a restore test tells you way more. And then having proper maintenance tells you way more. And the tool, again, you'll notice a theme. There's a theme to the titles of the webinars. They're all going to be, or the LinkedIn events, they're all going to be, are your databases or SQL servers actually what? And the tools that we make are all called SP_check something. So SP check backup is this one. And this gives you a lot of information about backups. And the one thing that this tool can't tell you, though, is it can't tell you when you last did a successful test restore. So if you're here as a sysadmin or a manager of IT and not a DBA, you should ask whoever's in charge of this stuff, hey, when's the last time you did a test restore? Why isn't it automated? Ask those kind of questions. And grab SP check backup and look and see what's good, what's bad. One thing we see all the time, and maybe you in the comments have seen this before, but if you're running like VMware and you're running Veeam, or you're running some other third-party VSS-based backup, we'll see what we call rogue backups. And I love this tool for this because we find them all the time, where you're doing the freeze and thaw thing in SQL, which is fine, taking a snapshot. That's a perfectly fine backup. But if you have your own backups plus those, and you're not doing log backups, you're kind of in trouble. And some tools like Veeam will actually have a checkbox that says something to the effect of truncate the transaction log. And all that does is it does a backup log to null in 2026. So you don't know if you're good until you look at your environment. So grab this tool and do it. The third question I think you should be asking yourself is my SQL Server current? SQL Server 2016 just went end of life last month, just about a month ago today, or a little bit over that. And SQL Server 2014 went end of life before that. And they both have what's called extended security updates. And number one, you got to pay for that. And it's expensive. Like, you should have just upgraded and saved the money, especially if you had software assurance. But Microsoft's not just giving you every security patch. It has to be critical. And you're signing this contract with Microsoft lawyers, and I've not read it, so I can't tell you the full details, but I'm going to take a wild guess that it's probably got some sort of a we'll support you best effort kind of thing. So you might get a critical update if they deem it critical. Do you want that to be your security? Do you want your patients, your members, your clients, whatever you're trying to do in your business to be protected by that in a day and age where Claude and all the AI tools, not just Claude. I don't mean to pick on Claude; it's a great tool, but all the AI tools are making the hackers just as efficient as they're making your dev teams. And you can argue about what efficient means there too, but they're helping them work faster too. So, are you running SQL Server 2016 anywhere? And that's great. Kaio just said, and if I said your name wrong, I apologize. Just said that they have backups in S3 and they restore them frequently. And they automate the task. Absolutely, that's an automatable task, and you should be doing that. Great job. And if you run a check DB on that at the end and have that be the output, now you know you're really good. And DBA tools can help you with that. I'll actually mention DBA tools as a link in the blog post too. I'm just making a note for that. So I don't have an assistant with me today, so I'm taking notes in my pen and paper here. But find out what versions you're running, and then find out what else is there. And it's license true up season. Everybody's trying to get off VMware still, thanks to Broadcom, and credit unions are merging every day. So know what you have, and we don't have a tool that says SP check know what you have, but there's a great tool. I'll put a link to that tool called the Map Toolkit. I just wrote another note. So the Map Toolkit will tell you what you have in your environment. Microsoft built this tool to basically tell you what you have so they can charge you more money and make sure you're licensing for it. In fact, that's how I learned that tool first a long time ago. One of my first credit union customers, actually, ironically enough here, they called me up because they had a huge license true up bill due. It was like 1.5 million. They had installed more SQL Server than they thought they were, they thought they did. And Microsoft needed the money yesterday for that. And it turns out they had more SQL servers than they needed. They could have consolidated. They had more enterprise than they needed. They could have done high availability with some of these smaller servers with standard edition clusters, and they just didn't follow the best practices. So run the Map Toolkit, look at your SQL Server estate, and add a column, like add the owner column, and just say, what application is this? Who can I choke in the company? Who's the throat to choke if they're spending more than they need? Who's in charge of it? What's their downtime window? And get a full picture of your SQL Server estate, because if you don't know about a SQL Server, you can't secure it. And it may not be, you probably know about your ERP SQL Server, if you're running your online banking app, or if you happen to have a core banking SQL Server, or like your main EMR at a hospital is on SQL, you probably know what SQL Server that is. But you don't know about the one that Bill installed 12 and a half years ago to run this little application that does this job, that ingests data and processes, and it's been quietly running for a small department for all these years. And if you don't know about that server and you secure the ones you do know about, it's Bill's server that's going to get you because you don't know about it. So get the inventory done and then run SP checks on those. Another question to ask is it configured properly? SQL Server is getting better with the install, but it lets you do dumb things. It lets you install and accept all the defaults. I mean, some of the defaults get changed now, like maxstop and I think temp DBs and max memory. I don't do a lot of SQL installs these days. I do some, but the team does more. But the point is, if you click next a bunch of times, you answer a few more questions than you used to have to in SQL 2008 or SQL Server 7, and then you click finish, you have a SQL Server that's going to work and it's going to go live, and you're going to be able to put users on it. But is it secure? Is it reliable? Is it healthy? I don't know. Probably not, because you accepted defaults. And these same kind of defaults, they exist in VMware, Hyper-V. They exist in Proxmox if you're migrating there for SQL Server, like some clients are doing without thinking about the defaults. And having a configuration miss doesn't mean your SQL Server is doomed. In fact, most SQL servers run for a long time with poor configurations, and they call us up saying it was great, got a little worse, a little bit more worse, and all of a sudden we're ground to a halt. And then they call. So get ahead of that. Don't let it grind to a halt. And this is the tool that we just released today. Well, I guess I said we didn't plan it, but we kind of did plan it. I made Jeff release the tool today instead of next week. But SP Check Health released today. This is our flagship store procedure. So SP Check Backup's amazing. SP Check AG is cool. SP Check Security is great. SP Check Health is a tool that looks at just the SQL server instance level settings, and it covers some things from backup that really matter, some things from security that matter, some from AG, but it lists everything as far as configuration that really, really matters, and it gives you an action plan. I mean, it doesn't tell you do this first, do that next. I can't do that in a tool. It's not a store procedure, but it tells you really where to focus your efforts. And every finding has a URL that goes back to our blog that explains why it's a finding and what to do about it. It's a free tool. Again, in fact, the post that's most recent on our blog on SPCheck on SQL straightpasssql.com actually has that link, and it's just on GitHub. You run it, and you can tell how healthy your SQL Server environment is and what to do about it. And in December, we're going to talk about, are your SQL servers actually available? That'll be a little bit more about high availability and really high availability, but in meeting your RPOs and RTOs. We're going to talk about this because you don't have high availability if you don't have availability. And if you don't have a healthy SQL server, you don't have availability. Another thing to look at is someone actually watching it? And again, I don't have an SP check tool for this. Excuse me. But a SQL server can have been configured perfectly 5 years ago. But that doesn't mean anybody's looking at it. That doesn't mean somebody's getting a daily health check snapshot of it. If you have a job for CheckDB, congratulations, you're better than half the clients that call us for health checks. But if nobody's looking at the output, or you're just saying, oh, there's no red X in the job, so it must be fine, but you're not digging in deeper to look at it, is it really healthy? So where do your alerts go? Who watches them? Who owns your failures? Do you have a daily health check? At StraightPath, we're our DB as a service clients, we use a tool called Scopos that we've built over the years. This does a daily health check that tells us what's good, what's bad, sends alerts. It does proactive stuff. So it'll tell us, hey, these settings aren't ideal. They're not really a problem today, but if we don't fix it, there's going to be a problem later. Who's doing that in your environment? And find who that person is, get them the tools and training they need, and make them start doing that. And, some of the monitoring questions that you really should ask today or tomorrow is, when did my CheckDB last succeed? And if you aren't the one in charge of this, but it's your sysadmin team or your DBA or your junior DBA or developer team in charge, ask them that question. On all of our databases, on all of our SQL Server instances, do we have healthy CheckDBs? When do they succeed? When do they fail? What did we do when it failed last? Has it failed? Ask them who receives a notification when an important job fails or when a backup doesn't run. And then what do they do about it? I have a blog post, I think last week, where I talked about a Geico commercial that I love and I share with my team. You can find the post and I'll put a link to it. But it's the security monitor. Just getting an alert doesn't mean anything until you do something about it. So you need to ask that question of yourself. The last question we'll cover, and we'll get to this in our December, or really January, webinar is will it perform? Will it stay available? We'll cover that some in December too. But There's infrastructure behind these things, the VM settings, the storage, the hardware behind it. Um, and these help answer the questions that we get. Again, I'm talking about clients who come to us and they'll say it's always slow at month end, or it's been really, really good, started getting slower, then a little bit slower, and now it's molasses, and now everybody's complaining, and we're losing customers, and we're getting bad reviews on the App Store. Well, you probably could have noticed this at step 0 or 1 if you were watching it. So what are some ways you can do that? And frankly, if you just run SP check health and run the other SP checks and start looking at that, you'll probably have some free performance boosts already. You might be surprised if you're here as a DBA, but I can't tell you the number of people who come to us with bad settings and power savings still enabled on their SQL servers in 2026. So at the end of the day, in summation, healthy isn't just one thing. It's not even just the 6 things, but these are the 6 we'll talk about, and our tools can help you figure out. And if you care who I am, and I'll share a little bit more in a second with some steps you can do, how to get our tools and all. But I'm Mike. I've been working with SQL for 30 years now. If you can't tell by my wrinkles and baldness, I started as a DBA. I've been a consultant for 15 years. I was a blogger, and I am a blogger and speaker still. I was a former 9-year Microsoft MVP up until 2020. And I run Straight Path. We're a group of SQL Server geeks, Postgres geeks in training too. Buck's teaching us there. We primarily do consulting work and SQL Server DBA as a service where we support 125, 130 customers with our managed DBA services. Buck also has a CDO practice where he helps people with data architecture, Azure architecture, and all of that fun stuff. And 3 ways to use all of this stuff tomorrow. And the most important way is the first way. And if you just walk away and do this, that's all we're gathered here for. Grab the SP check tools. They're free. They don't phone home. They don't report anything to me. If you click on one of the links to get more information, it doesn't give you a sales form. Just get your SQL service healthy. Fix the easy stuff. Use me for the fun stuff. We can help with the boring stuff too, but start there. Run SP check health. It's just got released today. Hammer your servers with it, run it and test first, because I'm just some guy on the internet and you don't want to just run a script for me. Find it, look at it, and then look at the most important priorities, the ones that we call high, understand why they are high, and start working on them. You can also call us. We can do a health check for $9.97 for you. We look at it, we score it, we help you prioritize. We don't leave until you understand what to do and have a plan, because just delivering you a findings document and then walking away doesn't actually help you. Or we can even help you own it. If you have a DBA team and you have one DBA, but you'd love to have a mentoring team to give them vacation coverage, hey, call me. I'm here. If you don't have a DBA team, we can help you and teach your team and really just take care of your SQL servers. But just do the checks yourself. So, I'm curious at the end here. I want to pause for questions, and I'll look at the LinkedIn chat for questions here in a second. Excuse me. But, this was a rapid fire survey through all the questions we're going to ask over the next several months. But I'm curious, did anybody's number change from what we started off with? From the 1 to 10, did your numbers go up or down based on just thinking of these questions? If it went down, that's not bad news, by the way. You just have a little more information about what to ask. You've made some unknown knowns become knowns for you. And really pick a SQL server, run SP check health on it, run SP check backup, SP check security, find one finding that you didn't understand and work on it. Come to the free webinar next week where we're going to spend the full 30 or 45 minutes talking about security. Come every month after that, and we'll talk about recoverability and availability and configurations and maintenance, and we'll talk about all of that stuff. And then I'll take any questions that we get here in a second, and I'll put them at the end of the day today into the blog post, the third one on the website right now. And I'll put the links I mentioned here, like the map toolkit and all of SP check stuff, and the Ola Hallengren scripts. But what questions do you have? I'm just curious if there are ways that we can help you answer questions before you leave. And there's a little bit of a delay, so I'll see how this goes with the questions coming in. And I think we're streaming on YouTube also, so I should probably go there and see if there are questions. I'm still, again, learning Restream here. So I'll just go there and see if there are questions there. I doubt it, but we'll see. Nope, no questions there. So I'll pause a couple more seconds for LinkedIn questions. And actually, I'll just go to the LinkedIn comments and I'll actually put the link to the blog post that I'll update just so you have that in one spot too. And again, if after this event, I'll go ahead and just put any questions answered in there, and I'll also put in the links that I talked about. All right, so I see one question. For some reason, the comments are coming slow. So Mohammed asked me, do I have any store procedure that can register the required? I don't, but actually somebody does. I got a comment on a post we had, so I'm going to reach out to them and see if they have that, and I'll put that there, Mohammed. That's a great question. There's DBA Tools has a process for that too that works. I'll put that there as well. It's test SPN and I think set SPN. So it's if you're familiar with DBA Tools, it's a set of PowerShell scripts that can do all this for you, and it can be pretty useful. So I'll get that link to you also. All right, I'm not hearing any other questions, so I think I'll end this. It's the 3:30 time. I'll put the links out there, and thank you all for coming. And again, get the free tools and check your SQL Server health. Thanks for being here. Have a good day.